So with 1.1.1 just around the corner, I wanted to go over my predictions for the changes with the meta that is 1.1 going to bring with it, especially in terms of the general playstyle, not so much about the classes. And one of my first points is that it's going to be a lot more useful to have higher AoE damage. For example, the Shadow Imbuement rogues or every rogue build with shadow imbuements is going to skyrocket in efficiency because of the added damage or bigger explosions and more single little explosions you are going to get with a buffed density. The same is going to be for barber builds in general because you can splash onto much more mobs. Therefore, for the resource that you spend, you are going to get way more experience. Therefore, you are kind of going to be way faster than before in terms of leveling. And on top of that, I also think that lucky hit builds are actually going to be much more viable because as well, with the nature of an increased density, you're also going to get way more lucky hits because you just have access to way more targets being able to trigger your lucky hits over and over again. For example, the popular Wernado Druid has two options or two variants, one of which being a a more traditional constant damage version, and the other one being a version with more reliance on lucky hit and higher damage ceiling, but overall less constant damage. Now, with an increased density, that build is going to probably always favor the lucky hit higher damage ceiling variant because, again, just because the density has been buffed and you will have much more access to lucky hits in general. And I think stuff like this is also applicable for other classes, and therefore we will hopefully see a couple of new builds coming up. I think that the single target is going to be a little bit less important, and which segues me to my next point. Together with the boss health changes that 1.1.1 is going to bring, we will have a problem that, together with the first point that I said, AoE is going to be very mandatory and you really need to gear towards AoE to be very efficient and level quickly and clear the dungeon quickly. But on the other hand, you kind of also want huge single target damage because the boss health has been buffed by quite a lot. And therefore, it's going to take you much longer on bosses. Now, for example, bosses at level 80 will have 50% increased health. I had to look at the notes here real quick. And that is going to make bosses take up way more of your time and is going to decrease your experience per hour by quite a lot. Now, with this change, I think it's a little bit weird because the bosses have been punching bags almost all of the time. The easiest boss in a dungeon have always been the bosses. Now, I don't really see a lot of problems with how it was. You were basically just getting rid of them as fast as you can. It was probably a little bit sad because the bosses were so one-dimensional and, again, basically just a punching bag. But just giving them more health is probably not the right solution because it just makes them just more of a punching bag and a waste of time because they don't really provide any nice experience gain. They basically just waste your time. And with this change, they now do even more of that because they just got buffed in damage. Now, I'm really worried about that part. And again, with the correlation between you want to have AoE for the increased mob density, but you also want to have more single target for bosses, that is going to be a little bit weird. I'm really curious how that is going to evolve in the meta. Will we see more S-tier maps just being S-tier because they don't feature a boss or have like small replacement bosses, for example, like Uldur's Cave, where it spawns the little pack of mobs with just one elite in it, or for example, Mercy's Reach has like 2 waves of elites that it spawns instead of an end boss. Those maps those sigils are, those nightmare dungeons are going to be probably skyrocketing in value when it comes to the tier list for the fastest leveling routes or the fastest leveling sigils. And I'm really curious how that is going to play out because, yeah, I think right now in the S tier, we already see that there is a lot of dungeons without a boss. There is only Sarat's Lair from the S tier that has a boss. And again, that one is fairly low HP because it's a spider and they tend to have low HP anyway. And I think you can already see a trend here that whenever there is no boss inside of a dungeon, that is already really good. And with the patch 1.1.1 coming up, I think that is even more so going to be the case. Although Uldur's Cave, Sarat's Lair, Mercy's Reach, and all the stuff have incredible density in the first place. So that kind of is the reason why it is S tier. But I think for the new tier list, especially this one is going to see a lot of changes, or some changes at the very least, because of the boss health buff. And therefore, I'm really curious how that is going to pan out. And I'm going to be revisiting this topic in a future video, coming back to this and then see how good on point I was basically, or if I was completely off here. So if you want to see that, I suggest you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will revisit this topic after having our hands on the patch and going through all of this stuff. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. That is going to be really interesting. Now, I also think that with the increased mob density, at least that's my prediction, the movement speed, such as dash on the rogue or all the other movement abilities, which is kind of indirectly buffing Necromancer, are going to lose a little bit of value. Because before, you wanted to skip those parts where there are no mobs as quickly as possible. Rogues used dash, for example, and that was really, really nice because you were able to skip all of the empty spaces very fast and get back to the next pack. And I'm very curious how that is going to pan out because there will be less empty spaces. Therefore, my prediction is that the movement abilities are going to lose a little bit of value. They're not going to get thrown out of the window at all. You still need them for repositioning, but I think there will be some builds where it might be viable to play just one movement ability instead of two. For example, on Rogue, maybe you can now go rid of dash. I'm not sure if that is the case. Again, I'm going to revisit this topic and look over the builds and see if I can get rid of dash, because imagine if you could get rid of dash on Rogue. That would free up just one complete skill slot, which you could then use for something else, maybe even triple imbue, which would be insanely overpowered, especially with the buff density. Then you would have an imbuement for every pack and basically explode the whole screen all of the time. That would be crazy. But again, we don't know yet. We will know tomorrow. I hope, in 24 hours probably, when this video goes online, I will be streaming the new patch, checking out the new density changes. And I am going to be testing the density buffs and then already theory crafting how that is going to affect all of the build guides that I did before and all of the build guides that I'm still going to do. Now, the next point is that, especially for hardcore, it's going to be really interesting how the density changes are going to affect the damage that you're taking, because obviously more mobs means more stuff targeting you, therefore more stuns that you can get, more damage that you get. And I'm really curious how that is going to play out. Is the mob NPC going to be basically blocking itself from dealing damage because there is too many mobs and they can't even hit you because they can't reach you? Or how is that going to feel? That is a point that I'm really, really curious. And especially in hardcore, that is one of the things that I'm really curious about, because imagine you just take, let's say, 20 to 30% more damage because there's just more stuff on the screen. Or is my fear maybe completely invalid? Because again, maybe they just block themselves from even dealing damage because they can't reach you because they are already surrounded with other mobs. And then again, a higher mob density also means that you can more mobs can be infected with the Plague Bearer after it has dropped from the Elite. So therefore you will have way more on-death explosions now. I'm also going to be really curious how that one is going to work, and if the packs are going to be much more deadly. Again, I think this is more of like a hardcore topic, but again, if you're also pushing higher nightmare tier dungeons in softcore, that is also probably going to be a problem, because we have just now seen the nerfs to the damage dealt and to their HP. But now, if the density is buffed by roughly 50%, how much more damage are you going to get in turn? Again, is it going to become much harder again because the packs are so much bigger and you're just getting way more damage? Now, example, you imagine you have 2 skeletal corpse bows in a pack right now, and then now you end up having 4 of them in a pack on a tier 70 dungeon or a tier 100 dungeon, and that one is obviously going to hurt quite a lot. So I'm really curious how all of this is going to pan out. I'm going to be trying all of this stuff, seeing how it's affecting the rogue builds specifically, but also the general gameplay. If you want to be part of me trying out all of this stuff, I am going to be live tomorrow on Twitch. You can find the link down in the description below. And if you like content similar to this, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel, and I'll see you next time.